The early 2010s was huge for indie horror. So many games were blowing up thanks to some of the biggest YouTubers playing them. You had Amnesia, The Dark Descent, you had Slender, The 8 Pages, you had Cry of Fear, the list goes on. These types of games were huge, but were also very similar to one another. Walk around in the dark with little to no defense and try to survive against the monsters. Now, don't get me wrong, there was nothing wrong with this type of gameplay, it worked, but I think indie horror was in need of a shake-up, and in 2014, we got it. Scott Cawthon was an indie game developer creating games such as The Desolate Hope, There Is No Pause Button, and Sit and Survive, just to name a few, and I do mean a few. He also made like animated Christian short films. How would you describe these? But anyway, despite Scott making a few games, none of them were successful. They just never took off. He was making anything he could just to get some food on the table for his family. Which is when the game that changed everything was made. Chipper & Sons Lumber Co. Chipper & Sons is a construction and management game released in 2013, but just like Scott's other games, it wasn't much of a success. It even received quite a bit of hate, but there was one comment, one single comment that would change the course of Scott's life forever. This comment was left by someone who apparently also did not enjoy the game, saying that the characters looked like scary animatronic dolls. This, as you would expect, left Scott feeling discouraged for a while. He had wanted to make a cute game for people to enjoy, but it was instead criticised for being scary. He almost quit game development altogether until he got an idea. He decided that he could use that idea of creepy animatronics to make something that was really scary. So he got to work. On the 14th of June 2014, Scott released a Kickstarter for a new game called Five Nights at Freddy's, with the hope of raising $10,000 to fund his project. And how much did he end up making? Nothing. He made $0. Not a single person gave money to this Kickstarter. This led to Scott eventually cancelling it, but still moving forward with the development of the game. And on the 8th of August 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's finally released to near immediate success. If you watched YouTube at the time, it was almost impossible to escape it. Just 4 days after the game's release, Markiplier posted the first part of his Five Nights at Freddy's playthrough, and I don't think I'd get much pushback if I said that this is the single most important video in Five Nights at Freddy's history. From this point forward, we saw a truckload of YouTubers playing Five Nights at Freddy's, which made the game more popular and those YouTubers more popular in return. So, what happened? Why was this small indie project so insanely successful? Yeah, okay, we can talk about the game now. The first night at Freddy's starts with you getting a phone call from the previous night guard who the fanbase creatively dubbed Phone Guy, voiced by Scott himself. Also, he's not actually calling you, they're just recordings left by Phone Guy. It's not important, but I just thought I'd mention it. So, you answer the phone because you don't want to be rude, and this is where he's all like, "Hello? Hello, hello? I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night. The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night." He basically gives you a rundown of what to do and how to do it, and tells you that the animatronics may mistake you for a metal endoskeleton without its costume on, and so they'll try to forcefully stuff you into an animatronic suit, which would apparently kill you, so we should probably try not to die. He also casually mentions that there was the Bite of 87. Where someone's frontal lobe got torn out by an animatronic, but it's okay because they survived, and that just immediately puts you on edge. Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay is deceptively simple, immediately throwing you off by having you be unable to move, quickly setting it apart from all other indie horror games at the time, where you're walking around big empty environments. No, rather you're stuck sat in an office using the security cameras to watch these Chuck E. Cheese-esque animatronics that somehow still aren't as scary as the actual Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. You'll also notice two big buttons on either side of you, One turns on the light outside your office, slightly illuminating the pitch black hallway, while the other closes a giant metal door that this pizzeria has for some reason. You've probably also noticed the power in the bottom left corner and the time in the top right corner. The power will slowly go down over the course of the night, but will be drained faster by you using the previously mentioned cameras, lights and doors. And if that power gets to 0, then the entire building will shut down and you won't be able to use those cameras, lights and doors, because this place is run on 2 AA batteries or something. The time in the top right signifies, well, the time, but this is because to pass the night, you have to survive until 6 AM. Wait a minute, survive? Well yeah, it's a horror game, but it's 3 AM and nothing's happened. Until you check the cameras once again and notice that one of them is missing. This moment is incredible. I think most people who have played this game would agree that this is up there as one of the scariest moments they've ever experienced in a horror game, because you know one of them has to move at some point, you know they have to, but the game takes its sweet time before it happens. It waits until around 3 AM, giving you ample time to listen to Phone Guy talk about the animatronics.
So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit.
Check through the cameras, try to figure out how the door and power works, all of which does an amazing job at building tension. Then you get to that moment, and the feeling of seeing one of them missing is unmatched. You start frantically searching the cameras for them, looking around the office, not knowing what to do. Maybe you'll slam the doors down, feeling a sense of security wash over you, until the power gives out, and then this happens. I cannot stress how phenomenal the first few minutes of this game are at creating fear. Think about what's actually happened here. One of the animatronics has moved from one room to the next. Yeah, he doesn't even go that far on the first night. He'll only actually show up at your door once or maybe twice. But despite that, the beginning of this game still has people quaking in their boots. And none of that would have been possible if not for the atmosphere. The first Five Nights at Freddy's has the best atmosphere out of any of the games in the series. It has not been topped. It's just too good. The lighting throughout the pizzeria, the pitch black spots outside the office, the static on the cameras, the lifeless animatronics, the posters on the wall, the overwhelming silence. And then the occasional sounds that echo throughout the restaurant, breaking that silence. Like singing from Pirate's Cove, pots and pans banging together in the kitchen, the groaning of scared children that you'll hear as the animatronics get closer. All of it together creates the perfect atmosphere for a horror game. The smallest thing will happen and it will be wildly effective due to the atmosphere. And the animatronic designs are also perfect for adding to the tension. Just like the atmosphere, I feel that the animatronics' overall designs are the best in the series. Future games try too hard to make the robots scary, but are still unable to come close to the original gang. They're the perfect mix of child-friendly animatronics and big creepy robots. You see how they could be entertaining to kids during the day, which makes them all the scarier when they're standing around at night, lifeless, barely moving. They are perfectly designed for this game. I kid you not, if they were designed any different, the entire game would fall apart. That's how impressive they are. Speaking of the animatronics, I should probably talk about how they work. On night 1, Bonnie and Chica are the only active threats you'll have to worry about. Kind of, but we'll get to that in a sec. Bonnie will start on the show stage and move throughout the left side of the pizzeria. He'll move through several specific rooms but jump between them somewhat randomly. You can tell he's moved when the camera he's currently on goes static, as he'll be gone when it returns to normal. Bonnie will eventually show up on the left side of your office. The only way to see him at the doorway, however, is to turn on the light. And if he's there, shut that big old door and wait for him to leave. If he's at the door and you don't shut it, he'll waddle on in, and then it's game over. Said game over screen also shows your character stuffed into one of the suits. As I said, we should try not to die. Chica works the exact same way, except she moves down the right hand side of the pizzeria, and she'll occasionally go into the kitchen, which for some reason doesn't have video feed, but you can tell she's in there due to the before mentioned banging of pots and pans. Apart from that, she works the exact same as Bonnie, moves from room to room, shows up at your door, then you close it and wait for it to leave, otherwise it's game over. So together, Bonnie and Chica make a really good duo, forcing you to focus on both sides of the pizzeria. On night 1, however, Bonnie is the primary threat, who usually start moving around 2 to 3 AM, while Chica starts moving at around 3 to 5 AM, so she probably won't even make it to your office unless you get really unlucky. But that's night 1, now we can move on to... The second night starts with yet another call from Phone Guy, informing you that the animatronics will become more active as the week progresses, which is precisely what happens as Bonnie and Chica are now more aggressive than they were on the first night. They'll be showing up at our doors far more often from now on. PG Tips also lets us know about the third animatronic we'll have to deal with from night 2 onwards, Foxy. Our pirate friend here works completely different than Bonnie and Chica. While those two will go from room to room making their way towards you, Foxy stays in one place, hiding behind the curtains in Pirate's Cove, and to find him you'll have to go to Cam 1C. So, the way he works is that he'll stay in Pirate's Cove but will slowly creep out from behind the curtain over the course of the night. To prevent this, you must consistently check in on him through the cameras. This won't stop him moving altogether, but it will significantly slow him down. Failing to check on Foxy enough will lead to him escaping Pirate's Cove. He has 3 different stances showing how close he is to leaving the cove, and once he does, he'll sprint through the pizzeria, heading towards your office. Once Foxy has left Pirate's Cove and begun a sprint, you'll have to shut the left door as quickly as possible, otherwise he'll do whatever this is, just checking in on you I guess. If you do manage to shut the door on Foxy, you'll hear him banging on it 3 times, signifying that you have successfully prevented his attack, and his cycle will reset. Foxy is so cool. There's a reason he so quickly became a fan favourite, and it's not just because he has a great design. Foxy's mechanics immediately set him apart from Bonnie and Chica, adding a whole new level of fear and tension into the game. Because you constantly have to be checking in on him, he's always at the back of your mind. You'll have that one part of your brain screaming at you to check on the silly pirate Fox, you moron! But sometimes you'll be so preoccupied with the other animatronics you'll be unable to deal with Foxy, and that's when he takes the opportunity to pounce on you. What makes it even scarier is that despite me saying that he becomes active from the second night onwards, he can actually become active on the first night, though it is seemingly quite rare, but it's still so messed up that someone could play this game for the first time and see this Fox gradually making his way up the curtain before running to your office. And because it's night 1 and Phone Guy doesn't tell you about Foxy until night 2, you'd have absolutely no idea what to do. I love it! Foxy's mechanics are perfect. Foxy's design is perfect. Foxy's singing is perfect. Everything about Foxy is perfect. Can you tell who my favourite is? Yeah, I like Foxy, but he would always scare me the most as a kid. Little 10-year-old me was terrified of seeing Foxy's shadow on his bedroom wall at night. I think it was the hook. The hook scared me. It's kind of ironic though, because despite Foxy being a god among men, I would say he's actually the least scary of the original 4 looking back at it. Speaking of which, we should probably get to the last animatronic. Night 3 starts with Phone Fella telling you he's surprised you made it this far. Oh, don't worry, he didn't mean it like that, I promise. He gives us some advice, telling us that if we get caught we should try playing dead, because they might think we're an empty costume as opposed to a metal endoskeleton. Surprisingly, playing dead kind of works. When the power goes out and Freddy starts his song, you can stay completely still, which gives you a chance of surviving a little bit longer, except in the mobile versions of the game. It doesn't work on phones, so unlucky I guess. After that, Phone Guy just hangs up. Yeah, that's it. That's the advice for tonight. You might have noticed that he didn't tell us anything about the last animatronic we'll have to deal with. He gives us no indication on how they work or how to deal with them. You just gotta figure it out whenever they become active. Oh, and guess when they become active, tough guy? Right now, by process of elimination, you can probably deduce that Freddy Fazbear himself is the final animatronic. Despite the game being named after him, he's the last of the gang to actually come after you, and I think that's absolutely for the best. Not just because it keeps the player on their toes, not knowing when Freddy himself is going to start moving, but also because he's ridiculously hard to deal with on first playthroughs. I've been playing this game for over 8 years now, and I still forget how to deal with him most of the time. Now that's probably just a skill issue on my part, but the point still stands. Freddy is a pain in the ass. Alright, so the way he works is he'll move down the right side of the pizzeria, much like Chica, but whilst she'll move around rather sporadically, going back and forth between rooms, Freddy follows a set path, going from the show stage, to the dining hall, to the restrooms, to the kitchen, to the East Hall, before finally making it to the East Hall corner. Freddy will not backtrack, he just keeps moving forward. Once he makes it to the East Hall corner, he will only move between there and the East Hall, just going back and forth before eventually sneaking into your office while he'll wait a while before jumping out and killing you. So basically, once he's managed to get into the office, your fate is sealed. To make matters worse, Freddy will actively try to hide from the cameras. The only way to know he's in a certain room is to look for his white pupils glowing in the dark. So how do you actually defend yourself against this guy? Well, luckily for us, that's also quite a pain. So the only indication that Freddy has moved is his laugh. When you hear his laugh, that means he's moved from one room to the next. The reason why that's the only indicator is because if the camera is on Freddy, he won't be able to move at all. He'll be stuck in place, only moving when you switch cameras. This can obviously be used to slow Freddy down significantly, but it's only temporary, as you'll eventually be forced to look away from him in order to check on the other three. Now that's all fine and dandy, but we also have to stop him from actually getting into the office, and to do that, we have to wait until Freddy makes his way to the East Hall corner, just outside your office, and then you shut the right door. Next, you have to wait for him to laugh again, signifying he's moved down to the East Hall, which gives you an opportunity to open the door. When he laughs again, that means he's back in the corner, so shut the door, wait for him to laugh, rinse, repeat. That sounds easy on paper, but keep in mind that you'll have to keep track of Freddy, whilst also dealing with Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, who are all more active than they were in the previous 2 nights. That's what makes Freddy so difficult to manage. He presents himself as if he isn't a primary threat, hiding in the shadows waiting until you're distracted with the other 3, and that's when he'll make his move, sneaking into your office before finally taking you away to be stuffed into a smelly animatronic suit. And as you saw before, if you run out of power, then the building will go dark and you'll be met with Freddy playing you a nice tune now on the left hand side of your office, accompanied by pretty Christmas lights. Once Freddy's song is up, however, then he'll walk into your office and eventually kill you. The length of the song is random though. Sometimes it will go on for around 30 seconds, sometimes it will go on for around 3 seconds. You've just got to hope that the RNG gods are kind to you. This also makes him the only character in the game with 2 different jump scares, so hooray for him, I guess. And that is how Freddy Fazbear works. If you asked everyone who has played this game which of the 4 animatronics killed them the most, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of them said Freddy, because he is very difficult to manage on first playthroughs. There is so much to learn when it comes to his mechanics, and Phone Face over here explains none of it to you. Nothing! You just have to figure it out by yourself. But thankfully, he's not too bad on the 3rd night, as it's his first time being active. But on the next few nights, however, Night 4 starts with our old buddy Phone Guy greeting us once again. He, sounds a little distressed this time round, though.
Oh, hello! Hey! Hey, wow, day 4. I knew you could do it. Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did. Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm going to try to hold out until someone checks maybe it won't be so bad. I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. You know. Oh no.
Oh, okay. So he just died, and we now no longer have a guide, which is great. Although the animatronic scream at the end didn't sound too familiar. The other animatronics sound like this when they kill you. But the one that seemingly finished Phone Guy off sounded like this. Ah well. Now, as I very subtly hinted before, Freddy is a lot more active on the fourth night. I don't know how to explain it, but I always subconsciously viewed night 4 as the Freddy night. He always feels most difficult to deal with on this specific night. And while Bonnie, Chica and Foxy have also become more aggressive, Freddy is still your main problem for now. And he's such a pain that this part of the script has actually been added after replaying the game for footage, because while I was doing night 4, Freddy completely disappeared off the face of the earth. Twice! I literally couldn't find him, meaning he must have snuck into my office extremely quickly and without me noticing, twice! That's ridiculous! Whatever. There's not actually much to talk about with the fourth night, it's just the same as night 3 but more challenging, so with that being said, let's move on to the final night. We finally made it to night 5 at Freddy's. Somehow, the phone starts ringing again, despite Phone Guy being, well, a corpse, and we hear... What? So this time we got some pure gobbledygook instead of any actual advice, but if you reverse it and slow it down, you get this.
It's inevitable that the mad agricultural development is needed by fuller use of your marvelous mechanism. Would it not be easily possible to employ some of them in quick laboratory experiments to indicate the influence of various microorganisms on plants? Bro, you are right. Countless use will be made by fusion array. Seldom knows contemporaneous the joy of creating.
Did you get all that? Yeah, I have no idea what it's saying either, but apart from just being really unnerving, it's also supposedly an extract from the book Autobiography of a Yogi. And it somehow relates to the whole children possessing robots thing. I don't know, go ask MatPat. During this delightful call, the animatronics will begin to move, and straight away, they are on your ass. And now that everyone seems to be at the most active, I think it would be a great time to tell you about the secret 5th animatronic that I've purposely avoided talking about. You remember that ominous roar we heard when Phone Guy died? Yeah, that's who it belongs to. On Cam 2B there's a poster depicting Freddy. Now, this poster has a chance of changing. It can either become a picture of Freddy tearing off his own head, or it could become a picture of what appears to be a yellow version of Freddy. If you see the latter picture, you'll hear what sounds like a little girl laughing as images flash on the screen, accompanied by a glitch-like effect and the words, "It's me." And as you put the monitor down, you'll come face to face with the same yellow bear from the poster, just sitting there, slumped over, lifeless, before you're hit with their face right up against the screen as that same roar plays, and then your game crashes. You can prevent this, however. If you quickly flip up the monitor when they're in the office, they'll disappear and won't show up again that night. This character didn't have an actual name, only referred to as Yellow Bear in the game files, but luckily, the community came in clutch and gave them a proper name. So, what did they call this golden version of Freddy? Golden Freddy. Yeah, we weren't a very creative bunch, but regardless, just like Phone Guy, Golden Freddy did become their canon name, which is really cool. I won't lie to you, at the time of writing this script I've never actually seen Golden Freddy while playing the game myself, and I would very much like to keep it that way. Don't know why, but Golden Freddy still really scares me. They absolutely terrified me as a kid, You know, back in the day when they showed up in that Markiplier video. Everything about them is so unsettling, and the idea of looking at Cam 2B and seeing that poster freaks me out big time, to the point where I get genuinely tense whenever I look at that camera. With that out of the way, we can get back to the main game, where the final battle has commenced, as we fend off these rodents one last time and then finally... we make it to the end of the night and collect our paycheck. The end. There, we've done it. All 5 nights at Freddy's. And I guess we decided to do some overtime because we're playing as a masochist. Yes, there is indeed a 6th night, because I guess game titles mean nothing anymore. I mean, the last game in the series takes place over the course of only 1 night. At Freddy's. Anyway, the night starts and we do not get a phone call this time, which is probably for the best after the last one. And if you thought the animatronics were crazy on the previous night, then you, my friend, are in for a shock, because these guys will be popping in and out like there's no tomorrow. And to add insult to injury, there's a mechanic I haven't told you about yet, which is that the door can just not work. Yeah, it will just stop working, which ensures your death. For the past 9 years, I thought it was an RNG thing, where the button would just randomly jam to screw you over, but my friend recently told me that the real reason it happens is because if Bonnie or Chica are at the doors and you take too long to shut them, then the game punishes you by taking away your door privileges altogether. And this can happen throughout the entire game, but becomes more common as the game progresses due to the animatronics giving you less and less time to close the door once they're there. So you're going to need to put your all into this night, and with that being said, I think you are now ready for me to explain the elite strategies for Five Nights at Freddy's 1 that I've kept hidden from you. So, straight off the bat, you see all these cameras here? Screw them. You don't need to even glance at any of them. The only ones you need are 4B and occasionally 1C. Why only those two? Well, Bonnie and Chica travel back and forth through the pizzeria until they end up at either side of your office. And you remember earlier when I said that you need to be constantly checking on them to see where they are? I lied. Checking where Bonnie and Chica are on the cameras is completely inconsequential. The game just wants to trick you into thinking it is consequential. All you need to do to combat those two is to be constantly checking your door lights until they appear outside your office, where you will then shut the door and they will then wander off. You just do that the whole night. That's literally it. Once again, Freddy is the biggest problem for me personally, but to dispose of him, we're going to abuse his freezing mechanic. Freddy will make his way through the pizzeria until arriving at 4B, which is his last stop before entering your office. But if we keep looking at him, then he can't get in, no matter what. So we're going to need to be looking at him constantly while checking for Bonnie and Chica. How do we do that? Well, we just flip the hell out of the camera, bringing it up and down or checking one of the door lights in between flips. Check one door, camera. Other door, camera. Door, camera. Door, camera. Do that the entire night. Now you may be thinking, PicaShing, my good man, what about Sir Foxy the Pirate Fox? And I know, I'm getting to him, goddammit, also I lied again. You don't actually need to watch Foxy through Pirate's Cove. As long as you are on the cameras, Foxy will be slowed down. It can be any camera, but once again, the game wanted to trick you into checking Pirate's Cove specifically, to create more stress, which is just such an effective way of scaring a player. I love it. Anyway, the strat I just mentioned, to defend against Freddy, Bonnie and Chica, also deals with Foxy, as consistently checking Cam B will slow him down, but to be safe we'll occasionally want to check on him to make sure he hasn't slipped out. To do that, we close the right door so Freddy can't get in, then switch over to 1C to see how Foxy's doing, and if you go sprinting down the hall, you just shut the left door and you're good. This also means we should start flipping the camera as soon as the night starts to make sure our pirate friend doesn't get a head start. And that is the elite strategy. It's not perfect, as RNG does play a part in this game, especially when it comes to Foxy. He can screw you over completely if you don't see that he escaped the cove. Or Bonnie and Chico could get you if you're super unlucky with checking the wrong door between camera flips, but even then, just do this all night, every night, and you can trivialize nearly the entire game. So boom, we did it. Night 6 is complete. We grab that bonus paycheck, cry over how little money we made, get that second star, see that there's a 7th night, wait what? Thankfully, however, the 7th night works very differently from the rest of the nights, being called the custom night and just being a fun bonus for beating the main game. The custom night essentially allows you to individually change how active each of the 4 animatronics are, having an AI level between 1 to 20. 1 basically being inactive, and 20 being the equivalent of the animatronics enabling God mode. So yeah, like I said, just a fun bonus that allows you to create whatever type of night you want. And there's definitely no super challenge that was so difficult that when the game came out, Scott Cawthon himself thought it was impossible. Oh, wait a minute! Yes, of course, when you have a custom night that works like this, the big question is, what happens if you put all the animatronics on max difficulty? Well, you get 420 mode. All 4 characters put on an AI level of 20. You remember when I literally just said that level 20 is basically the equivalent of the animatronics enabling God mode? Well, I wasn't joking. As soon as you start the night, they'll be teleporting around the pizzeria like an anime character. They'll be showing up at your doors constantly, making power management extremely difficult as you'll be shutting the doors and checking the camera constantly. 420 mode is absolutely insane, but not quite as impossible as Scott thought. The strategy I mentioned earlier was created pretty much just to overcome 420 mode, and if you are able to pull it off, then it will significantly increase your chances of beating it. It's still going to be tough though, because like I said before, RNG plays quite a large role in this game, but still, that is the updated 420 mode strategy. Now the reason I say updated is because back in 2014, the strategy was different. Less efficient. The main difference being that you would close your right door every time you lift up the camera as a way to combat Freddy, but that's now been done away with due to consuming way too much power. But regardless, 420 mode was able to be beaten using this method, with the player Big Bugs being the first to ever accomplish this impossible task. Scott was so convinced that it couldn't be done that the 3rd star you now get for beating 420 mode wasn't even in the game when Big Bugs first did it, with it being added after it was shown to be possible. YouTubers such as Markiplier then went on to overcome this challenge themselves using the method shown in Big Bugs' video, creating a now iconic moment.
Oh my god! Oh, I did it! I did it!
And that's everything Five Nights at Freddy's has to offer. Whenever you beat a custom night, you'll receive the final end screen showing that we got fired, but that's probably for the best. So yeah, I'm serious this time. There's no 8th night or anything like that, it is over. This really is the end. Oh, have I ever beat 420 mode? Fuck no, I don't want to put myself through that. I tried it, got to 4 AM, and gave up. That's the best you're gonna get from me. It's weird looking back at the story of the first Five Nights at Freddy's because, well, there isn't one. At least not much of one. With how insane the overarching lore of this series became, it's easy to forget how simple the first game's story was. Simple, yet effective. Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't convey its story like you would expect. Rather than simply giving you it as you progress, it instead hides pieces of the plot behind secrets that are placed throughout the game. Which, for better or worse, started the trend of indie horror developers essentially drip-feeding the player the game's lore through secrets and Easter eggs, rather than giving them the full story outright. So what are we told? Well, going back to Cam 4B again, we can see that there's a list of rules on the wall, some of which are questionable, but seemingly at random, this list would change to one of 4 newspaper articles, each one giving us vital information. The overall story that these articles are trying to tell is that a total of 5 children went missing within the pizzeria and were never found, with video surveillance showing they were all led into a back room by a man wearing a mascot suit, used to gain the children's trust. The man was identified, arrested, and supposedly charged, although as we know from later games, nothing was ever proven in a court of law. Despite the suspect being arrested, the bodies of the children were never found. And this all led to an obvious decline in business for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a decline that only got worse as parents reported a foul odour coming from the animatronics, with what appeared to be blood and mucus leaking from their eyes and mouths. One parent even likened them to reanimated carcasses. Despite trying for many years to repair their reputation, the missing children incident, combined with the sanitation issues, resulted in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza being set to close by the end of the year. Moving away from the newspaper articles, we can talk about what happened next based on what we learned from the main game. It was during this tough time for Freddy's that Phone Guy took on the night guard position, to protect the building from any possible intruders. He also recorded some tapes that he would then leave to help guide any future night guards through their new job. On the fourth night, however, another tragedy occurred, as Phone Guy was attacked and killed while working the night shift. Although it wasn't long before a replacement was found, Mike Schmidt was hired as the new night guard, but when he arrived, he came face to face with something far worse than any burglar. Those once beloved animatronics had begun to move through the pizzeria, heading straight for the security office. Phone Guy had claimed they were just left in some sort of free roaming mode, but that was far from the truth. The way they move, the way they look at the cameras, the pained moans coming from the suits, it became clear that they were alive, and they were what killed Phone Guy. But with his unwavering determination and the tapes that were left for him, Mike made it through all 6 nights. He collected his paycheck and headed back the next night for his 7th shift. Except this time, after completing his shift, Mike was given the pink slip, being fired for tampering with the animatronics, general unprofessionalism, and odour. So that's the whole story of Five Nights at Freddy's 1. The reason I decided to explain it the way I did was to show that the story as a whole is the definition of simple but effective. It draws you in with all its mysteries and answers just enough while still leaving you wanting to know more. This will be one of the only times I say this about Five Nights at Freddy's, but I like how much of the story is left vague here. It lets the audience theorize about what happened without making it impossible to figure out because of the clues left in the game. For example, we're told that the children's bodies are never found, but based on what we see in the game, we can deduce that the 5 bodies were hidden in each of the 5 animatronics. Blood and mucus leaking from the eyes and mouth, odour coming from the suits, the animatronics making sounds like that of a child groaning. It all points to the killer stuffing the corpses in the animatronic suits. These same points can be used to figure out that the souls of the deceased children possessed the 5 animatronics, and are the reason they've been roaming around the pizzeria and attacking security guards, which later became the central theme of the overarching story throughout the series. Despite being a very solid story, there are still mysteries purposely left in to get people thinking, and they're really cool looking back on it. One of the biggest being the iconic "It's me" mystery. We had no idea what the words "It's me" meant, but it would suddenly show up throughout the pizzeria. Like the posters on Cam 4A, which can also turn into pictures of a child crying. The sign outside Pirate's Cove, or the hallucinations you can either randomly get hit with, or see when Golden Freddy appears. Oh right, Golden Freddy! Yeah, no one had any idea what was going on with this guy. It was easy to guess that one of the children was stuffed inside of it since 5 kids, 5 suits, but apart from that they were a complete mystery. They would show up and either kill you or disappear. Although there is one major Easter egg I haven't told you about, which also ties into the final big mystery that spawned from this game. If you go into the custom night and change the animatronic AI levels so that you get 1987, then Golden Freddy will jump scare you and once again crash the game. 1987, 1987. That's when Phone Guy said there was a bite that left the victim without a frontal lobe all the way back on night 1. Could the game be hinting that Golden Freddy had a role to play in this incident? Who knows, but these remaining mysteries got people online talking, and that, combined with the simple yet effective story and easy to understand gameplay, shot Five Nights at Freddy's to new heights of popularity. Looking back at the first Five Nights at Freddy's has been a weird experience. This series is so ginormous now that it's easy to forget how simple, yet genuinely terrifying the first game was. In my opinion, I think Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most important video games to come out of the 2010s. It defined the indie horror genre for the next 10 years, with it spawning a ton of fan games, or games that follow a similar structure as it. And while you could definitely argue that wasn't a good thing in the long run, I think it's undeniable that the game had an immense influence and was even responsible for kickstarting the careers of many game developers. To the point where years later, Scott himself would set up the Fazbear Fanverse initiative, which is a collaboration with Five Nights at Freddy's fan game creators, where if you're accepted into the fanverse, then Scott himself will personally fund your entire game, as well as help get merchandise for the game, all in order to get fellow indie developers started, so that they can find similar success that Scott did. Which, apart from just being the kindest and coolest thing ever, just shows how many games were made thanks to Five Nights at Freddy's. The reason the game took off the way it did was really due to a number of things, one of which was just that it was unintentionally released at the perfect time. By 2014, indie horror was getting stale, and desperately needed something new, and video game playthroughs were more popular than ever on YouTube. Then along came Freddy Fazbear with a game that blew everyone away. Not because it had incredible graphics or a huge open world, but because it was a game with a simple premise and easy to understand gameplay that was fresh for the time while still doing an incredible job creating fear and tension. It's simply you, sat alone in a dark, decrepit pizzeria, unable to move, fending off once beloved animatronics while trying to preserve as much power as possible. It was the perfect game for YouTubers to sink their teeth into, and led to it blowing up essentially overnight. Five Nights at Freddy's wouldn't be as big without YouTubers playing it, and a lot of those YouTubers wouldn't be as big without Five Nights at Freddy's. It had the power to draw people in with its simple gameplay, easy to digest for anyone of any age, quickly cultivating a large fan base, mainly of kids, like me, but we're all grown up now, which is fun. But the most important aspect that has kept people talking about the game to this day is the tragic story hidden beneath the surface. Full of mysteries that instantly got people talking online, speculating and creating theories. Fan songs were also made, some of which now have a lot of views. All of which just led to more and more people being exposed to this game. Scott Cawthon went from a struggling indie developer to an internet celebrity responsible for making one of the biggest horror games in years. So he did what anyone would do. He made a sequel, and another sequel, and another sequel, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. And now we're here, in 2023. The series is 9 years old, and the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is finally coming out, based on the first game as well. It's been a truly, truly incredible journey. This series was a defining part of my childhood, and it all started back then, on the 8th of August, 2014. And I think Scott himself put it best when he said,
"And if you could go back in time, is there anything you would change or add to Five Nights at Freddy's 1?
No, not the first one.
Yeah.
I can go back and think about all the other games and be like, I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. But
Yeah.
no, the first game was just kind of a perfect storm of ingredients. It was, it was just the right time. When, everybody was really into indie horror games,
Yeah.
and I think it was the right look. It was the right feel because it
Yes.
was something different than what everybody else was playing, and it was kind of a type of horror game, or at least the antagonists were something that hadn't really been explored in horror games. I didn't feel,
Yeah.
the idea of animatronic creatures. So, and everybody really liked Foam Guy. Obviously, everybody liked the little Easter eggs thrown in and the backstory. No, it was just a good mix of ingredients, and it was kind of lightning in a bottle. And I don't think I was ever able to fully capture that again, and I don't think I really will be able to. And that's
Mhm.
okay. I mean, like I said, that was kind of lightning in a bottle.
hello. I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night. I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact, so I know it can be a bit overwhelming, but I'm here to tell you there's nothing to worry about. You'll do fine. Hey, you're doing great. Most people don't last this long. I mean, you know, they usually move on to other things by now.
Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention, but you can actually just skip every single night in the game. It only works on PC, but if you hold C and D together on the keyboard, and then press plus on the number pad, then you can completely skip the night. But you wouldn't do that, would you? You're not a coward now, are you? Nah, you probably wouldn't. Okay, bye.